I love it when someone wants to bring up an episode that they think we got wrong. Love to talk about that because there's always some interesting stuff to talk about. So the first one is Leather Elf. Leather Elf says, in a Star Wars episode, you and Jamie tested high ground. That is very specifically the line from the third prequel where Obi-Wan says to Anakin, Anakin, it's over, I have the high ground. The myth we were testing is it really a fait accompli when one member of a sword fight has the high ground? Is it a undeniable advantage? Your conclusions ended up being based on the findings of two Padawan rejects, Jamie and you. Well, you're not wrong, but wow, that's a pretty aggressive stance to take. I don't know that I used Padawan reject in the episode. Why did you not bring in two professionals, fencers, or better yet, two Society of Creative Anachronism fighters, SCA? It's a terrific question why Jamie and I considered ourselves to be reasonable test subjects. I will tell you on that one, we had written into the episode a beat in which our tests were replicated by the very folks training us. And we pulled that sequence for time. I agree with you. The result would have been more valid. But sometimes we ended up with episodes where, and I can't even remember in that one, but like there was sometimes when something on the episode goes wrong, it provides so much extra narrative to the episode that you got to cut something else. This has happened in a bunch of our episodes. I don't have examples off the top of my head, but in this one specifically, I very much remember that the build-up to getting to the sword fight included a bunch of beats we did not expect that were awesome gifts for us in the editorial, and thus we eliminated the last test. You're totally right. That would have been a better elaboration as a finale. The second one, YT TheLegacy has a question about an episode I consider one of our absolute best. So I'm going to read their question in full, YT TheLegacy. Out of all the myths that were covered, the one that frustrated me the most was killer cable snaps. Killer cable snap is the myth that a cable stretched under tension and broken will whip around and slice through something, like right out of 13 Ghosts, right? Like right out of a Final Destination. I've been watching the Final Destination movies. They're so much fun. I'm trying to refer to it. I was calling it comedy gore, but it's not exactly comedy gore. It's more like bubblegum gore, right? It's just like plenty of it, but none of it matters that much. Anyway, the myth with killer cable snap is a classic that all fishermen trade. Anyone who owns a boat, a fishing boat specifically, will tell you this story, and they know that it's true, that a braided steel cable, when it gets stretched to its breaking point, when it breaks, will snap like a sword and slice through you like a samurai sword. And so that's the myth. It was the one that frustrated me the most was killer cable snaps because the cable was cut under tension instead of being pulled to its breaking point. By cutting it, I'd imagine it removes a huge amount of potential energy. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on that myth and whether there's been any proof of this happening in the real world since it aired. And if you had a time machine, what would you tell yourself, past self, on how to do that myth differently? Well, I would not go back and tell my past self to do anything differently, and I'll explain to you why. You bring up an excellent point, but we address it. They do make machines for snapping cables. They use them. PG&E keeps a couple in every municipality they're in because they need to be able to understand the breaking strength of stuff. Not every municipality, but like it's something that power companies often want to test, is the tensile strength of cabling and stuff like that. So there are machines that break cable, but those break cable within a highly controlled, highly shielded steel box, because it's very hard to predict what is going to happen when you break a cable because you don't know where it's going to break. So we knew these machines existed, but we knew that they cannot control where the break happens. And what we wanted was the most amount of the most amount of centrifugal throw. So we were thinking about cables and their snapping. And we were thinking if a cable is just, hang on. If a cable is just under tension and it snaps somewhere along here, how do you know whether to test if it can go through meat? Where do you put the meat? If I just have a device, let's say I build this device for breaking the cable and it breaks it between these 2 points, the most likely place for it to break is either here or here. It's like where it's actually being tied is usually the weakest spot. But then if I want to find out if it goes through meat, I don't know how to get this to move in a way that's predictable. So in order to obtain some kind of result, we built a methodology in which we actually stretched the cable around a bollard. So it was mounted down here. It went around a huge concrete pylon mounted in the ground, and it was, I think, pulled back like this. And the idea was we would cut it here, and the resulting amount of tension being released would cause the cable end to whip around the bollard. And we tested this in scale, and what we found is indeed that there is an ideal placement for something to get the maximum amount of force from that cable moving. We needed that to be able to predictably put meat in the cable's way. Now, there's also this question about a natural break versus a structured break. A natural break, again, is unpredictable. And unpredictability does not work for me as a producer from a narrative standpoint or a safety standpoint. And when we thought through, okay, if we put it around a bollard, we can put a hydraulic cutter over here and we can cut it at what we ended up choosing was 90% of its breaking strength. Every material like this rope, wire rope, has a tensile strength. And it's usually, if it tells you that you can lift 100 pounds with it, its breaking strength is probably in the nature of 300 to 400 pounds. There's usually a 3 to 5x increase between working load and breaking load. So we specifically looked at this cable, saw what its working load was and its breaking load, and we cut it with a hydraulic cutter at 90% of its breaking strength. That's where we felt comfortable. We felt any higher than that breaking strength and it could break on its own. We definitely got confirmation from that from certain underwriters' laboratories that we called. But that gave us the most predictability also where the cable would travel. Now you say, by cutting it, I imagine it removes a huge amount of potential energy. I disagree. I don't see where that would occur within the equation. If I am cutting a cable and it's under tension here, and that tension will get released on both sides of the equation, I don't see where the cutter is absorbing energy. So I feel, based on my discussion with you of this, that our methodology was as good as it could be made to obtain the most amount of reasonably predictable energy from the cable. And it was strong enough that I have no doubt that this myth is completely busted. So I'll tell you what happened on set that day. I was sure that we were going to be slicing through meat with cable because, like I said, I grew up on the water. Every fisherman I've ever met knows this story. And we have tons of anecdotal evidence. All sorts of accounts of people being sliced by cables. Linda Wolkovich was our producer on that episode. And so I was sure we got an extra high-speed camera because I wanted that shot of the cable slicing through the meat. And the first test we did, everything worked great. We got it to 90% of its breaking strength. We cut the cable, it moved around. We could see it was moving at its fastest speed on the high-speed camera. Did not cut through the pig, dented it. And we're like, let's go with a bigger cable. Go with a bigger cable. Same thing happens. Go with an even smaller cable. Same thing happens. We do 4 tests, I think, before lunch. And in all of them, all we're doing is denting the pig. And don't get me wrong, this pig is dead, like already dead, but like it would be dead from the impact that we're talking about. This impact is a lethal impact, but it's not a slicing impact. So at lunchtime, I call Linda and I'm like, do you have any first-person accounts of a cable slicing through someone? And she says, yeah. Let me call you back in a couple minutes. So she goes through her research. She calls me back, and she's like, none. Every account I have is secondhand. No one in any of the accounts that she had researched had personally witnessed. Now, here's the thing about cables on boats. there's about 1,000,000 different ways that cables or ropes on boats can harm you and can cut off your limbs and can leave you with completely altering injuries. But I'm here to say I live a reasonably assured life that it does not happen from the whipping of the cable. Thank you, YT TheLegacy. I appreciate your disagreement with me and how frustrating that was for you. I stand by our results, and I hope that satisfies. I love talking about this stuff. We often had vigorous arguments on set about these very questions. What is the valid way to call this one done? What is the reasonable set of tests to really put it to bed? Oh, cyberpunkmods.com asks, why do you think your large-scale Newton's cradle failed? Jamie, that was Jamie's build, and he really made the best possible faith effort to make it work. They were steel balls filled with a really hard concrete. But the problem is that the what do you call it? Energy reflective properties of concrete are not the same as steel. Concrete absorbs a little energy. I think that's one of the reasons that our large Newton's cradle failed, as amazing as it was. Super Angus 52 says, after the fire versus ice episode, what was done with the flamethrower? So fire versus ice comes from a advertisement, I believe, where two people, one with a flamethrower and one with a CO2 fire extinguisher, are facing off against each other. The question is, can fire fight ice? And to do this episode, I actually took a full-size cylinder of CO2 and built a nozzle for it that specifically allowed me to keep the flamethrower's flames from reaching me. That was totally successful. And by the way, I am so sure that the stunt team from Ballerina was watching our episode when they were doing Ballerina's water against the flamethrower. I actually think Ballerina, I believe that crew was looking at a few different MythBuster episodes. Actually, I will tell you, I'm going to put this in my favorite things, but I have a favorite action sequence from movies this year, and it is the grenade fight from Ballerina. There's a specific way in which she utilizes grenades in so many different ways, but every which way is exactly right. The thing about grenades that most people don't realize is the kill zone of a grenade is only like 5 feet radius. It's like if you're more than 6 feet from a grenade, you're probably going to live through that, from my understanding. And so her thing of like having them blow up like behind a door where the shrapnel's not going to kill her, but the sound's going to deafen her. Like, I just love that sequence. Anyway, sorry, there was a question. What did you do with the flamethrower? Both Jamie and yourself considered it extremely dangerous. Yeah, flamethrowers are terrifying. Flamethrowers are within power, like a battery versus gasoline. The fact is that there is no amount of battery compression that can yield a one-to-one relationship with gasoline, i.e. the amount of energy inherent in a gasoline of this volume so far exceeds any other fuel source or battery source. And if you've ever been around burning gasoline, you understand its insane vigor. So being around a device that fires at like 100 feet easy in a second is really spooky. When we were shooting that, there was only a couple of people licensed to operate flamethrowers within the state of California. Literally, like, I think 2 or 3 people. And so Jamie built that flamethrower under direct supervision of one of those guys. And then at the end of that episode, I don't think he took the whole flamethrower, but he took some key part of it that we weren't allowed to keep, right? Like, we were not allowed to have or own a working flamethrower. So some key component of that got strategically destroyed or removed. Plus, what was the process to be able to build a flamethrower? It's not fun. Honestly, I mean, I recognize that Jamie did have some fun on that build, but I also remember that it kicked his ass because it's a difficult machine to make, and to make well and to know that it's going to operate. I'll tell you that my mom was really pissed when she saw that episode, because to protect myself from the flamethrower, I was in a hutch made of steel and tempered glass. And during one of our tests, the flames went past me. Now I'm wearing a full proximity suit, but that still wasn't quite good enough for my mom. The flamethrower, yes. So I think that Jamie was allowed to keep the parts of the flamethrower that looked like a flamethrower, and that the pyro who instructed Jamie how to build that kept the rest of it. I believe that's how we did that. Thank you for watching. I wanted to talk to you about Tested membership. The Tested members are a key community that we find really, really remarkable, that's very separate from Tested and from YouTube. The Tested members, they buy each other memberships during our live streams, so if you're wondering whether to become a member, watch one of our live streams and someone may just give you one. It is hard to overestimate how much the Tested members actually make possible on this channel. They give us a lot of wiggle room. They give us a huge amount of feedback.
That's a member right now.
Thank you so much for enjoying your membership. Description for everything you need to know. And for all the members out there, thank you, thank you, thank you.